Hello, we're John and Elizabeth. We're sat on board Corrick. We're currently at anchor on the River Fowl, having arrived here after a fast passage from the Yelm yesterday.
Yeah, good.
But we're having another little bit of a think. Our original plan was to jump off towards the Scillies, but we're not so sure anymore. Hope you enjoy this episode. Well, we arrived yesterday, really nice trip, and we were pushing a little bit to get to the west with a view to jumping off to the Scillies, but
We were going to go to Penzance.
we were going to go to Penzance, and it's still a possibility, but we've been looking at the weather and looking at all of the advice and guidance on going to the Scillies, and there was one line that jumped out particularly, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, in the West Country cruising, it said, ideally choose a spell of fine settled weather with neap tides and arrive in daylight with ample time in hand to find a suitable berth. Do not be tempted to make a dash for the islands if there's any hint of deteriorating weather in the offering. You are far better off remaining on the mainland. So that's what we've decided to do.
And I think that's what we're going to do. And we've decided to stay in the River Fowl because
there's lots to explore here.
There's lots to explore here. So we'll do that over the next couple of days. In the interim, I was when we were leaving the Yelm, we had to get alongside and get some water, and we did a thing called ferry gliding. Which we've done a couple of times, which you really quite like because it makes life nice and easy. But it doesn't appear in many of the sailing books that I can see. I've heard people talk about it, but I looked in my books to see if it was there for getting alongside, and it isn't. So I thought I might just describe what we did.
And we have some brilliant footage of it.
Yeah, we got some okay footage of it,
yeah.
So I hope this is useful. Ferry gliding really was the answer to a problem that we were facing, and it's a frequent problem of a narrow channel, a jetty that is in reasonably deep water along the line of the harbour entrance itself, but where actually there's really not a lot of room for turning or manoeuvring or that sort of thing. So there could be up to 2.5 knots of tidal stream going up this river. And the mooring buoys mean that there's actually not a lot of room, and therefore if you can get yourself set up and hold yourself in position, ferry gliding works really well. So if you imagine the jetty, you turn into the tide and adjust your speed to exactly to counter the tide and any wind that there might be, then simply turn the tiller gently, turn the boat very gently across the tide, and she will drive gently towards the jetty. And if you're coming in too close or too fast, turn away a bit and you will drive back away from the jetty. And the key here is little and frequent control movements. So this was us setting up. So we were just off the Harbour Master's pontoon. We turned to turn ourselves into the tide, and we were stemming that directly, and then very much a case of just making sure you've got control, setting the exact revs to stem the tide, noting the tide is going to change as this goes on, but then the next thing you want to do is look out to the side and have a look at what sort of speed you are, and you can see here we're just dropping very, very gently backwards in about 1 knot worth of tide. So the boat that was tied up disappeared, and that was great, and that was then the cue for us to start turning in. So tiller over to starboard, and the boat starts to inch its way into port. And always a good idea to take this nice and slowly to start with, just to keep control of it, but it just comes on. And then as we got a bit closer, I was stood behind the tiller. I can see the face of the jetty, and tiller over and straighten up, and every time I put the tiller over to port, I essentially moved just another tiny bit closer to the jetty. And if I'd needed to arrest that, if I was coming in too fast, then it really would have been a case of tiller over to port, the rudder would have gone round over to starboard, and then we would have stopped coming in so closely, or possibly even aborted that. So Elizabeth was then able to very easily throw the line over. Our friend took it, and then the boat just gently came in, and just as we got to the very last minute, just a tiny bit of engine revs just to get us in, get the cleat lined up nicely. Actually, the bow had been coming in just ever so slightly fast. But then the boat's alongside, you're holding it there, there is no big jump to make and no chance of moving. So we sat alongside, we watered ship, and we were able to have just a few minutes with our friends, having a small drink before then setting off. Well, we departed the Yelm 6 o'clock in the morning, an hour or so before high water, in order to give ourselves a blast down towards the southwest in a good breeze. It was a particularly nice sail. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this useful.